With the help of development and the state and county, we were able to get the funds needed to build the project. $14 million for 1 mile of road. Seems like a lot, but there's a lot that goes into that. Especially in this case, this road has a lot of fill or dirt to bring up the road, and we'll have the trail go underneath it. And then there's utilities, water, storm drains, sewer, all of these other utilities that also go with the road. Street lights, landscaping. There's a lot to a road that it ends up costing a lot. I mean, costs just keep going up, and unfortunately, I don't see them coming down anytime soon.
Welcome to Herrimanology,
the official podcast to keep up with Herriman City.
We'll take you inside the city, explore the latest news and updates, show you how your government operates, and discuss the issues that affect us all. Now, here are your hosts talking all things Herriman on Herrimanology.
All right, welcome to Herrimanology. It is Thursday, October 23rd. Usually I'm looking at the middle, but our camera is in use this morning elsewhere, and our backup camera is actually in use elsewhere today. So we get two cameras. Most of you won't care, but here we are. I'm John LaFollette, Communications Manager for Herriman City, joined today very kindly by our City Engineer, Bryce Terry. How are you?
Doing good. Yeah, it's been a good week so far.
The latest coworker, city staff member to be roped into the podcast, so
yeah,
appreciate you joining.
I'll do my best.
Last night we had a city council meeting, so we'll recap a few things there. First, in the work meeting, I just want to mention there was a kind of a kickoff to the biennial budget, which our city managers kind of painted the picture of like, here's our general level of service right now and budget accordingly. Because
exactly.
The budgeting process kind of starts now and it isn't really fully approved until June of next year. But so the city manager is kind of painting a picture of like, here's where everything stands right now, and keep that in mind as you're going over the next several meetings, talking about budgeting priorities and how much money we have versus how much we can afford to spend, and just kind of going along those lines.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting kind of point of discussion because Herriman's, growing at a rapid rate, just like a lot of the other cities, and how do you maintain that level of service, like you've talked about, while your needs are growing? We're getting much more roads, right? And they brought up the example of snow plowing. Like, how do you, with all these new roads, if we don't hire anyone or get any new equipment, can you maintain that same level of service if you're not, increasing the budget for those things? And so, and we're planning over 2 years, so it's a big project, and I think the city manager did a good job of kind of laying out, hey, this is where we're at. He asked all the departments kind of rate yourselves on how you're doing, and then if you had more funding or less funding, how would that impact your level of service? So I think our council's kind of understanding that that's a priority. We got to know how to do our maintenance, how to plan projects in the future, and what can we do with the resources we have.
I really try not to be snarky on the podcast because it really should be we see a lot of, I'll be nice, interesting comments and questions. A lot of people say, show us the money, show us where everything's going, like how are you spending? And then they never actually look because that information is very readily available.
Right.
People just don't bother to look. I'll flag this now as this is a time to pay attention if you genuinely care about where the city's money is going and where it comes from. It's pretty complex, but we take it kind of bite-sized pieces. So last night's discussion was about an hour. It was in the work meeting. It was the first item. I just want to kind of point that out, that if you genuinely care where your tax money goes, and I hope you do, this is the time of year to start paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting because, us as staff, we sit through all of the budgeting meetings, and there are many. Like you said, we're starting now, going all the way till June, really, to plan our fiscal budget. And so we see all the discussions, and on the back end, our finance director has a lot of work. When he's not in those meetings, he's preparing for them. And so, there's a lot of work that the public probably doesn't see. And then oftentimes we have a public hearing, to make a final decision. And sometimes it appears, they make a decision without, knowing everything that goes into it. And so, from a staff side, maybe the public just doesn't see everything that goes into decision made by council on budgeting or projects, whatever it is, that goes on in the background. But there's a lot of work going on by staff and by the council.
We'll get into how much things cost and why they cost that in a little bit. We'll touch on a few other things from the council meeting last night before we get there. Next, actually, one of your items that you presented was a design contract for the athletic complex. So people have been curious. We talked about the land swap whole thing and the future vision of the athletic complex a lot earlier this year. If you missed those, you can go back and watch them. They're available wherever you're watching this one or listening. But what was this item? And it was approved ultimately, but what was this?
Yeah. So with that land swap area that is intended to be an athletic complex, we kind of have a vision for the area, but nothing has been fully designed. And so this area, that we've talked about earlier in the year, it's just over 50 acres. And so the intent is to build an athletic complex, right? And what will it take? So we went out to proposals from designers. So that is a kind of a combination of teams to do a project like this. You have, almost 15 athletic fields and restrooms and buildings for teams to meet in and possibly, other recreational facilities around there. So we went out to proposals for a consultant to help us design this project. So that includes, concept planning to full design so that we can go out to bid. We bid out our projects and get a contractor on board to go into construction. And so, this contract was to select one of those proposals. We received 4 proposals back from firms that specialize. It's, like I said, a team of engineers, architects, and landscape architects that come together for a large project like this. And we had a kind of a scoring committee rate those 4 proposals, and the highest scoring proposals we took to council and recommended moving forward on the project and entering into a contract with them. And like you said, the contract was approved at council last night. So now we're just working on getting the contract to, executed, and then hopefully we can get started sooner than later on laying out the fields, figuring out how many fields fit, what's going to be included in there. That's kind of all part of this process.
And it's kind of nice too. Last night, I think you mentioned we had kind of tentatively budgeted about $1 million for the design, which some people are like, holy cow, yes, it does cost that much. But
it's crazy.
Actually, nicely in this one, it won't cost that much. Some of the bids came in over that budget. Some, I don't know if it was multiple or one came under the budget. Yeah. But they also have the recent experience on a project like this. So that kind of works out nicely for us.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just to give you a perspective, we had 4 proposals come in, and the range was about from $400,000, the lowest, to $2.3 million. So it was a big range. And the cost can get up there. Like I said, you're paying engineers, you're paying surveyors, you're paying landscape architects, you're paying architects, all to kind of come together on one cohesive project. But you're right, the winning proposal actually was the lowest cost, and there's a little bit of skepticism when you go with the lowest cost. Are you getting a lower quality product? But we vetted the proposal, and it didn't just score well on cost. It scored well on qualifications and experience. Like you said, they have just completed a very similar project that we actually went down and toured. It's in Provo, called the Epic Sports Park. And so it's a kind of a similar bunch of athletic fields intended for regional tournaments of teams. And so we confirmed with them, hey, you're good with this price. And they were pretty comfortable moving forward based on, even though they were the lowest cost, they were probably one of the best qualified as well. So they received the top score from all of our scorers. So we're excited to get started with them.
And then I think it was after that in the meeting, we talked about what we call an interlocal agreement with the Olympia Public Infrastructure District. We will not get in the weeds of what all that means because we don't have time. But basically, this is talking about a stretch of 7300 west from Main Street. I guess it go north or south. I'm thinking Main Street northward up to a future extension of Herriman Boulevard, 126 West. This is slightly under a mile of roadway we're talking about. But this was basically an agreement, a formality for funding. The nice thing is we're not spending any city budgeted funds for this, but the state is throwing in $10.5 million, and Salt Lake County's at least funding from Solid County is another $4 million.
Right.
Again, it does cost that much, but so we kind of formalized that to have some money pass-throughs from the state and the county to reimburse the. There's just so much complexity to this. Anyway, so outside funding to build this road maybe is the quickest way to put that.
Yeah, and it's a great example of us working with our partners, whether it be the developer or the state, the county, to be able to get those funds. And honestly, if you know the background, we've been trying to build this road for, the last 10 years. We've been applying for funds through Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is kind of a planning group in the area that helps fund projects. And we've been trying to get funds for this for some time. Luckily, with the help of development and the state and county, we were able to get the funds needed to build the project. But like you said, $14 million for 1 mile of road seems like a lot, but there's a lot that goes into that, especially in this case. This road has a lot of fill or dirt to bring up the road. And in some cases, we're bringing it up 20 feet to go over kind of a creek, and we'll have the trail go underneath it with a pedestrian culvert. So it's the pedestrians don't have to cross the road; they can just go right underneath the road, and that's on the Butterfield Creek Trail. So, and then there's utilities, as everyone knows, water, storm drains, sewer, all of these other utilities that also go with the road, street lights, landscaping. There's a lot to a road that that it ends up costing a lot. I mean, costs just keep going up, and unfortunately, I don't see them coming down anytime soon. So, but it is exciting to get that executed. They've actually started doing some of the earthwork out there already, so some of the residents might have seen that. If you get on Main Street and go to 7300 West, you can kind of see they've started the work, but this officially set the bounds of the cost and what will be reimbursed for that project.
Just want to highlight a couple of other projects that are going on. Well, that'll be enough for the city council meeting last night, but 6400 West, it's less than a third of a mile. The extension from Herman Boulevard, not even all the way northward to Midas Creek. So it's pretty much just flat ground. That is about $5.5 million.
Right.
On just green, like we're not redoing anything. It's just greenfield development.
New construction in an open field is yes, generally that's going to be less expensive than the kind of project like a reconstruct like we did on Main Street a few years ago, where we're actively working on a road and widening and rebuilding it as it is. But the costs are the asphalt, and you got to remember again, utilities, but we're digging down, quite a ways to make sure we get a solid foundation underneath the road. They're bringing in base and road base underneath the asphalt. So there's some layers before we even get to paving, and the utilities, curb, gutter, sidewalk, all of these things are continuing to increase in price, and they're materials that we can't make ourselves. So we do have to hire that and bring in concrete and asphalt and road base from quarries. That does cost, not only for those companies to make it, but then to ship it into Herriman and place it, and the labor to actually install it is a lot of money. And so, we're luckily being able to find, different ways to fund projects outside funding source, so we don't have to solely rely on city funds. But we're always looking at ways to make, these projects more efficient, more cost efficient. Are we using the right designs, and what ways can we? And so we talk with contractors, we talk with designers on the best way to kind of minimize costs. But even with that, there's just a reality that construction right now is not getting any cheaper.
One of my life goals, I don't know how realistic it is, but to help people understand that government can't just fabricate materials and just wave a wand and things just appear. Right. Like as the saying goes, if I had a dime for every time someone said, just pave the road or just build the park. So like you mentioned with road pavement, we don't have a pavement mill that Herriman City owns. Right. That's not a thing. Yeah. Pretty much no city does. Right. So we have to hire that out. We have to buy material from other places. There are a handful of other places that have pavement mills. Yeah. We don't have these giant milling and paving machines. There are only a handful of those in the whole state. Exactly. So we are competing with other cities for their time in order to hire them to come in. We could buy one. but that costs money. We could make one, but we don't have a manufacturing facility. Like, if you just kind of think through all this stuff, things cost money, and money only comes from the taxpayers, unfortunately.
Right.
Thankfully, we can pull from other larger buckets of money, like the state or the county. Right. Ultimately, that's all of our taxpayer money too, but it's not from the Harriman City budget. But that's why things cost money, and that's why cities need revenue. It stinks because nobody likes rates or fees or taxes.
Right.
But that's just planet Earth.
And we try, there are the temporary fixes, right? Filling potholes with some material, but as much as we can, we don't want to be, doing the Band-Aid fixes. We want to be doing the permanent fixes so that we're not, continually coming back. But as you mentioned, resources are scarce, and so we've got to plan that well and be able to kind of get the best bang for our buck as we do those things. And yeah, we're competing with other cities. We're for time and resources, for whether it be asphalt, concrete, all of these materials, they are finite resources. So there's some changes, even with nationally on like asphalt, they're kind of restricting how much emissions the plants can put out. And so that restricts, how much asphalt we can get at a reasonable price. They might have to, go to a different mix and impacts the prices of asphalt that we can get. And like you said, we can't make it ourselves. So we're a little bit at the mercy of these contractors and these plants that are making the material and supplying the material. But we do have good partners. We're lucky in Salt Lake County. There's several asphalt plants. There's several concrete plants. In more remote areas, they might only have one, and it might be 100 miles away. So we are in a good spot for that. As far as we have pretty good contractors around the area and pretty good area to work in. But the costs just continue to happen, and we would love if we could, like you're saying, wave a wand, snap our fingers, and have a brand new road. But it takes a while to get to that point, unfortunately.
One couple more questions to get to. One that we've heard a lot, especially this year, but it's kind of an ongoing thing, and we're not the only agency who hears this. Why can't we just finish one project before we start another?
Yeah, no, and it's a valid concern. I get the same thing. You pass one construction zone just to hit another one, so you're adding 30 minutes to your drive, when if you just went through the one, it'd only be 10 minutes, and it's just frustrating going into construction site after construction site. I will say in Utah, our construction season's pretty limited because of our weather and our seasons. So generally, road work will only happen from April to October, because once the temperatures get low, we can't pave. And so in that time, a lot of things queue up. A lot of projects queue up that we've been planning. And as you mentioned, the city has needs for projects, and within the city, we have different needs. Water line projects are one that we're upgrading water lines, making sure we're not having water leaks. But it could be a widening project as well, or it could be asphalt preservation, like we're talking about, trying to keep our roads in good condition. And there's just such a small window for that construction season. But then you add on top of that, not only do the city have needs, but you have the UDOT projects that have really impacted our residents. The Bangor at 134th, and before that it was Bangor and 126th. But then on top of that, you have like the sewer district. So in this last year, we had the sewer district with a project, Bangor with a project, Herriman with a project. And unfortunately, we would love to, be able to make sure there's only one project impacting our residents. But if we did try to wait till UDOT was done with their project, or the sewer was done, we would never get anything done. And especially with this short construction window that we have, where the temperatures are good for road work, it's impossible, honestly, to not be able to have some overlapping. Like, we do try, from a traffic control and road work perspective, say, okay, let's not place this project right in front of this project, right in front of that project. We do try to plan it out. But yeah, and we do try to coordinate with the other agencies. The sewer district we meet with monthly, UDOT we meet with often, but sometimes those project needs, we just can't wait any longer. And if we do, then the level of service for the residents is just going to get in a place that we can't maintain anymore. And so, yeah, it's difficult. It's definitely difficult to be able to, go forward on construction projects when in the background there's outside agencies working on their projects as well. But I think it's just probably impossible to expect that you're only going to have, one construction project, especially with the growth that we have in Herriman. But not only the growth, but like I said, some of our water line projects are really just to replace old infrastructure and upgrade it so that we make sure we're still supplying good water. We're installing new secondary water lines in certain areas to try and get secondary water to areas that have been promised it in the past. And so, yeah, it's a balancing of how much do we impact the public versus how much are we going to let the projects queue up and create a queue that's unsustainable for the city to handle.
Never mind budgeting.
Exactly.
We've talked about costs keep going up over time. So if you can do a project now at this cost and you decide to wait a year or two, that cost is almost always going to go up if you wait into the future.
Exactly. And so the sooner you can build it, the cheaper it'll be. We estimate, at this point, we're estimating about 3 to 5% inflation every year on a project. So if we don't build it this year, it's going to be 4% more expensive the next year. And so that is part of the consideration. While we get the funds, let's build it with the budget we have and do as much as we can with the money we have while we're getting the best value we can for our dollar. The other tough thing is, there's some projects that are kind of outside of our control, like we said, UDOT and sewer, but even subdivision development, right? Sometimes they need to cut into the road to connect a water line into their subdivision, and it's really, the timing is based on their construction, and so we don't always get a control. I mean, we do try to minimize what that looks like, but we don't always have the ability, if they need to close the road and it's the only safe way to make a connection for the workers. Sometimes we have to allow a road closure or, lane closures for development of new subdivisions. And so there's just a lot of things that we don't know the timing of until they come up and then we have to deal with them. So.
Yeah. One final question. This one... So we've been telling people for like 2 months to write in with questions. Someone finally did.
Oh, cool.
So this comes from Grant, who actually happens to be an old neighbor of mine. So hi, Grant. So he was asking, in regards to the Juniper Crest Road connection, the Real Vista / Mountain View corridor traffic signal, and the Panorama development, kind of on the southeast end of the city.
Right.
We talked about Panorama quite a bit early in the year, but some people may have forgotten. Said, rumors abound. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've talked to someone that has heard from so-and-so that blank. If you could drop in an update on the podcast and tell us where we currently stand, especially the Juniper Crest Road connection, that would be appreciated. So Juniper Crest Road, when the master development agreement with Panorama and all that happened last year, we hoped it would be built in 2025. Here we are in October. It's not built yet, but what does that look like?
Yeah, so they just ran into the development. The developers of Panorama kind of ran into some issues. They have so many different property owners that they're trying to partner with to make this Panorama development work in this master development agreement. So there were just, different property owners that they had to come to the same page on. And so they weren't able to, get started on their project, which, as you mentioned, the first thing that the council required of them is to complete Juniper Crest Road before that they can have homes built on to their development. So kudos to council on making that a priority for them. But they finally got to the point where all the property owners signed. We're moving forward on what we call a plat to make sure the roadway right-of-way or the property for the road lines up with the design. So the design's pretty much complete. The property is now getting all completed there. So our stumbling blocks are getting out of the way here. We are able to talk about building it this next year, and hopefully this time it sticks, right? but in talking with them, and then the city is working on what was mentioned there, the Real Vista Mountain View intersection. So we're going to widen the middle of the road there, where right now it's just a stop sign, but install a traffic signal on both sides of Mountain View, and Real Vista is the kind of, east side of Mountain View, where Juniper Crest will come in and tie in on the west side of Mountain View. And so the city's working on that. We're hoping to go out to bid this winter and build in spring and summer and hopefully have it open in fall of 26. And Panorama's really trying to hit the same schedule with Juniper Crest on tying in. So that's a developer-led project that we oversee, but they're kind of on the hook to build that. And so they're trying to meet that same schedule of kind of meeting together in the fall of next year so that we have a full intersection. It's signalized. You can drive all the way on Juniper Crest and hit Mountain View. And then hypothetically, you'll have a traffic signal there. You could continue across Mountain View down to Real Vista, kind of by Lee's Market and all of that kind of area over there. So.
I remember when my wife and I moved into that area about 2019. A lot of people were asking about Juniper Crest then. That was 6 years ago. And we all thought it was a couple of years away or a couple of years ago away. So a lot of those people have been told many times over, it's next year, it's the year after, it's a couple of years away.
I've responded to people that, hey, we think it's in the next few years. Hopefully we can. Yeah, there were some obstacles like I talked about. We didn't own the right property to connect the road, so we can't build the road on property we don't own yet, right? But as we worked with this development, Panorama, things started to align. We thought it was going to be last year, but with the issues they had with some property owners, it pushed to next year. But yeah, we should. They're going to start kind of here any day now, and then kind of pause for winter, and then hopefully by fall of next year we have a connection on Juniper Crest.
So at the risk of doing that again, hopefully next year.
Hopefully, right? Yep, that's always the caveat.
And then Panorama, as I understand, has at least some preliminary plans under preliminary review for their first subdivision. So that's not a city, like they're building their own houses and everything. Yeah. So that's their project. So we're not going to be able to force that timeline one way or another, but that at least seems to be starting to start.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, they have the incentive to build Juniper Crest so that they can sell homes on Panorama. And so I think, there's an incentive both ways for us to get Juniper Crest connected and then get these subdivisions built. So
a little bit longer podcast today. I know a lot of people had a lot of engineering related questions, so hopefully we got to some of those. Thanks, Bryce, for carving out some time today. Thank you for listening and watching. And I usually turn to the other camera here that is not here today, so I'll stay at this one. As always, write in communications@herriman.gov and we'll try to answer your question if you have one. So with that, thanks for listening and watching, and we'll catch you next time.